Hey guys, it's Deena, your mindset evolutionary here at flynubianqueen.com, the network for melanated women just like you and me. Welcome everybody, Sunday night. I'm so happy to have you guys here. Looks like we have a nice little group coming in tonight. Oh, awesome. I see the numbers jumping up because I did let's see here. I'm just getting everything situated. I know I'm a little bit late tonight, so I hope you all forgive me. Okay, so got the notes in place now. I can't wait to share some things with you. You know what? My brilliantly beautiful, gifted beings, my black queens and my kings out there. I started therapy last Monday, and I wanted to talk to you guys about some things that came up. Now, a few days ago, I posted a video. I hope some of you got an opportunity to watch it. It's a video I created for one of my acting classes about 2-3 years ago, and it's called Fuck Feminism. Hey, Freddie Smith, he put unity in our community, NOI.org. The time is and what must be done. Okay, cool. We would definitely check that out a little bit later. But I did put the video up here if you guys want to take a look at it at a later time. If you haven't had a chance to watch it ahead of time, it's called Fuck Feminism. And basically, it is an illustration of my inner workings and how I related to men. And it was based on fear that was instilled in me from other women about being vulnerable, basically. Like, don't be vulnerable to men. You don't need them. They're just going to hurt you. They're going to cheat on you. They're going to rape you. They're going to rape your kids. They're going to, take all your money. They're going to leave you. They're going to beat you. They're going to do all these things to you. And, that was something that I was dealing with throughout my life from being a young woman, a young girl, I should say. And so I kind of posed the question to you all, feminism versus jealousy. So I was kind of trying to formulate this in my mind, like, what am I going to talk about on Sunday? Because I had such a great breakthrough on my first day of cognitive therapy that I want to share this with you. So please forgive me if this is a little bit rambling, but I'm being very, very vulnerable right now by sharing this with you. And give me 1 second, guys. I have my Invisalign or my Smile Directs in right now, and I can tell it's like impeding this talk. So give me a second to just remove them. Ta-da! So much better, right? That's how off the cuff we are. So I posed the question, do competitive women hold each other back under the guise of feminist loyalty? And then I had that video there, which I think really illustrates how I felt about being a part of the Generation X feminist movement, where we were in the Black women's community in DC. I'm not sure how other people experienced it, but we were often told, you don't need a man. You can do it on your own. Be an independent woman. It was this circle of women at the club dancing around, elbowing all the guys away, singing INDEPENDT, however you spell it, independent woman, right? There were so many songs about that. And I think it really got ingrained into our minds and our spirits during that time that men were no good. Fuck men, fuck what they talking about. We don't need them. All they good for is some D. And we started to take on a more masculine, in my opinion, more masculine energy. And I was guilty of that as well. And that was also coupled with my very personal experience of my mom relaying some family stories to me about some things that had happened to her as a child, where she was taken advantage of by a family member, a relative, on several occasions over a few years of her young life, and how she was not believed, and she wasn't protected by the women in her family. And it was the men who actually came to her aid. You know, her brother, I think she revealed it to her older brother, who was a lot older than her, and you know, it came out, it got confronted, that this person, I think it was my step grandfather, was doing these things. And so I had to sit and listen to these stories, and I think my mom was trying to protect me by relaying this information. Don't be alone with your grandfather, you know, don't trust him, you know, these things have happened to me. The other women in your family, if you're around them, their husbands have done these things to them. And so it was this really bad negative picture that was painted for me at a very early age about being what it meant to be a beautiful woman, what it meant to be vulnerable, because all the women in my family were, you know, to my young eyes, beautiful women, very pretty, different shades, different skin tones, different colored eyes, different colored hair, you know, very mixed sort of background in my family. So I was looking at these women and I was just like, oh my God, these women are so exotic and beautiful, and just, what do you mean, you know, they had all these awful experiences with men, and like looking at the pictures in the photo album and then looking at them now today, I could see the marks, the scars from some of the beatings some of them had. I could see the emotional scars from some of the verbal abuse, the neglect, the emotional abuse. I saw it and I was just like, oh my God, I started getting this message that it wasn't safe to be a beautiful girl, that men were the enemy. And also I started growing up with this inside. And then as I continue to grow up, I'm in the 90s and there's all this independent woman stuff. And it just kind of coalesced in a fear of vulnerability for me that I did not even realize until recently when I went to therapy, and it was amazing. And so how does this tie into feminism? For me, it tied into feminism because I feel like feminism feeds in a lot of ways, in my opinion, in my experience, in what I observe. Feminism feeds into the fear that women have of vulnerability. It creates a fear around inequality. It creates a fear around any kind of vulnerability towards, you know, men in any kind of way, whether it be in the workplace, you're going to get sexually harassed. So your fear of sexual vulnerability, your fear of, you know, if you're encountering a man physically and you guys get into some kind of altercation, being beaten. It creates fear around being controlled by men, being vulnerable to a man having financial or mental or emotional control over you. And I think that feminism, in my opinion, tends to focus on the negative aspects of male and female interactions. And so if you can imagine already having, you know, my mom relaying some information to me about different things that had happened to her where she was vulnerable to a man, different things that had happened to some other family members where they were vulnerable to men who were abusive, alcoholics, whatever, cheating on them, philanderers. And then coming up in a time period where I went to a women's college and it was all about, you know, women, we can do it, we don't need them. And I do remember having thoughts at certain times where I was like, well, wait a minute. I think we might need them for something. I know we need them to procreate. I know science is working on the fact that we don't need each other anymore, you know, in order to procreate. But at the end of the day, you know, I like hanging out with men. I like, you know, there's some good guys out here. They're not all bad, are they? But whenever I put that forward, whenever I was excited or hopeful about a man in my life or a man, you know, even when I think back to my encounters with my my step granddad, I never experienced anything. Maybe there was one time I felt a little bit of discomfort, you know, a little bit uncomfortable around him. But I don't even know if that was because of me or because of what had been told, because he never touched me in that way. I never felt weird or sleazy or any kind of weird sexual energy when I was interacting with my step granddad. And for the most part, I felt very loved by him. And I have fond memories of him. So it didn't match up. It created a disconnect. And then again, with the feminist movement, how this ties in for me is that I was again being told all these stories about men, and they're holding us back, and we're not getting equal pay, and we can do anything they can do. They're just not giving us an opportunity, and we don't need them. We can raise our families. We're superwoman. Like, men are horrible. They're always doing something. They're sexually harassing. Now, did I have some experiences in my life? Absolutely. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say I walked through life and I never had a guy sexually harass me, or, when I was growing up as a teenager and developing, my body was developing, that I never had guys like, the young boys try to touch you inappropriately, feel on your butt, as they used to call it back in the day. Absolutely, there were some things like that happened. But it wasn't to the extent of what I was being told, where I felt like the feminist movement was doing, or is continuing to do, a lot of fear mongering with no solutions towards how we reconcile with the men. And it's got us to the point where I think a lot of us are even afraid of the men, right? And we're not even admitting it to ourselves. I hear young girls say things like, I don't believe in marriage. Why don't you believe in marriage? Well, I don't want anyone controlling me. I want to do my own thing. That is fear. That's fear mongering. What do they mean someone's going to control them? The only way someone can control you is if you allow them to control you. Now, of course, there are extreme situations where someone will be in control of you because they kidnap you or something crazy like that. They mess with your mind. But you also have to admit that in certain situations that women have been controlled, etc., there was a process that they went through. There was a lot of different things where they were like, okay, they were letting things slide, or they were allowing certain things to happen to where they ended up in a situation where they were totally being controlled. So there's some responsibility that I feel like as women should take in this. So let's get back to why I wanted to talk to you guys about this in the first place. So I was talking to my therapist, and what I found is that it wasn't men that I really needed to be afraid of. Because when I really began to talk to her, she was like, well, did you have any experiences? And I was like, no, I didn't have these experiences as a kid. And then it became apparent that the experiences that I had where I was vulnerable and I wasn't protected of myself, or no one was protecting me, it was at the hands of women. And that's kind of what that video that I made for class touched upon, is that it was the women in my life who I was vulnerable to, because I was told by them that it wasn't safe to be vulnerable to any men. And so I allowed myself to be vulnerable to the women. And what ended up happening to me is I was touched inappropriately. I was backstabbed. I was bullied. There was a lot of jealousy that came in the form of people being unsupportive, other women being very unsupportive of you, going out doing your own thing. Or if you got a great guy in your life, they were kind of doing these little niggling things to like pick at the relationship or pick at your confidence or cast doubt onto the relationship. Sometimes I don't even think the women in my life were consciously doing this. I think they were actually doing this based on their own fears. So they were projecting their fears onto me. And because I was so busy, I was being told by my mom and some of my female family members, as well as this overarching societal feminist movement that's telling me that men are bad, men are the enemies. that kind of coalesced into me being overly protective with men, right? And being overly vulnerable and open to all kinds of, I want to say almost like abuse, but abuse may be a strong word, but definitely people taking advantage, women taking advantage of me or bullying me in certain ways, or kind of me allowing that to happen for me to be dragged down. And when I revealed this in my therapy session, I busted out crying because I think for the first time in my life, I was really able to see things and allow myself to see things from that perspective. I gave myself permission to say, you know what, it's not the men in your life who were doing things to you. Yes, did you have some run-ins with men? Absolutely. There were a few run-ins here and there, but it wasn't the big boogeyman story that was told to you by your mom. That was not your experience. That was her experience. But you took it on. And then maybe within the feminist movement, for me, there was a bit of that as well. My experience with men, I mean, I've dated some decent men, some great men, and also some bums. I think we all, you live long enough and you're not married, you're going to have a little bit of an array of types of guys that will come into your life. Some of the guys were like great friends to me, looked out for me, spoiled me. My dad that raised me, he was like that. He was a phenomenal guy, a great disciplinarian, but also very loving and involved and engaged in my child rearing. He was married to my mom and me and my brother. I've talked about him before. To me, he was a pretty good guy. And so I'm looking at all these things and I'm like, something doesn't match. But yet I felt compelled, I think, on a very deep level to identify with my mother's story. And I'm wondering how many of our young women and even older women today feel the same way. They feel compelled to identify with the current feminist rhetoric around our interactions with men. Now, again, yes, there are some men out here who are doing some absolutely horrendous things. They need to be checked. They need to be held accountable. They need to be jailed, some of them. Some of them need to pay restitution, reparations, retribution, whatever you want to say, right? Yes, there absolutely are men out here who are quote unquote monsters, right? But there are a lot of guys out here who are not monsters. There are a lot of men out here who are good men, good, solid men, men who take care of their families, men who look out for each other and for the women in their lives, men who are doing great things in society, men who are, a part of spiritual communities and leaders in that way, and who are not sleeping around with the congregation, men who are innovators in their fields, right? Men who are great athletes, and you don't hear about the ones as much who are good family men, who are loyal to the women that they're with. You hear more about the guys who are out here with baby mamas and stuff. And so I kind of wanted to bring that forward because I'm like, how do we separate ourselves from this fear, this negativity that is attached to the feminist movement around our interactions, our vulnerability to men? Because I don't think it's leading us in the direction that we think it is. I think, and again, these are personal thoughts and things that I'm going through, but I'm working on my vulnerability from a healthy place. So I'm bringing this conversation to you, so that we can talk it out a little bit, and so that I can practice being vulnerable without fear, because I was a little nervous about challenging feminism in a public forum like this on something like flynubianqueen.com here on Facebook. But I know that, you guys are intelligent Black women and intelligent Black men. And I know that you can handle all kinds of levels of conversation. And so just really quickly, I just want to do some promotion and say thank you so much for joining me, Deena Jacobs Live, your mindset evolutionary, here on flynubianqueen.com, on Facebook and on YouTube. Please follow me at Deena Jacobs on Twitter, on Instagram. You can find me also on YouTube, Deena Jacobs Rants. And if you would like to make a donation to keep me going here and help me to upgrade some of my equipment, etc., or just to say thanks for the work that I've been doing, I would really appreciate that. You can do that at Deena Jacobs, DeenaJacobs. That's DeenaJacobs on Cash App. Please take a moment, if you haven't already, and like, subscribe, and share this video if you think someone could benefit from it. And I'm going to jump into some of your comments before I go into an exercise that my therapist gave me to do around this work. I don't know if any of you women out here are experiencing anything close to what I'm talking about. And basically, it's a general fear coupled with a bit of confusion about how we're supposed to interact with men under the feminist movement. And I think there's this disconnect, there's this gaping hole between what we're told about men and what we're supposed to do and our responsibility to the narrative that feminism is putting forward, right? But they're giving us no solutions on how to interact with men who are not predators, or how to interact with men who maybe are exhibiting some signs of insensitivity or, whatever, sexual harassment, pushiness, but they're not full-blown monsters. They're just men who maybe don't understand where things are or don't know anything different. I don't think that anyone's talking about how to deal with the pressure that a lot of women are feeling from other women in the movement to be independent, to forsake, building loving relationships and that lead to healthy families, how to interact with men in the workplace, and still, without being so aggressively masculine. No one's telling us how we can do that, how we can balance that out. It seems like it's more black and white. So again, if you guys have a business idea, please go to flynubianbusiness.com and check it out. And if you want to learn about money, the markets are going crazy right now, a lot of money to be made and lost if you're not smart about it, please go to flynubianmoney.com and check them out there. Again, if you haven't already, please like, subscribe, and share. So I want to check in with you guys and see that, wow, there's 35 comments. Thank you guys. Again, I appreciate you so much for joining me here, listening to what I have to say, and also sharing your how you feel about things too. So let me get into your comments. Annie Cunningham, love you, lady. You are so respectful to all of us. Thank you, Annie. That means so much to me. Thank you. Freddie Smith, question, who is the boss? Answer, God, the time and what we must be done, NOI.org. Okay, we got somebody in here promoing hardcore for the Nation of Islam. I feel you. Romel Harris, hello, Chicago love, 100 love. Thank you, Romel. Love to you too. Toyani Chioke, sorry, hun, she says. Okay, I'm not sure why she said that, but okay. Hey, baby, how you been? I'm glad to see you here. Freddie Smith, woman is a god. All right. Freddie Smith is repping hard for NOI on here. I'm going to skip down a little bit. Top fan, Carter Valento. Good evening, Princess Queens. Okay, Tiani Chioke says, they had these horrible experiences because they were beautiful. Beauty is a gift and a curse. All right, let me stop right there and pick up on that point that Tiani Chioke spoke about. Beauty is a gift and a curse. That I have heard that so many times. Beauty is pain. So imagine being a young girl looking at her mother who is beautiful, looking at her aunties and cousins and grandmas and all them in the family photo album who are also very beautiful, above average beautiful. And hearing these stories of how they've been victimized and beaten and raped and all these things have happened to them, and cheated on and husband left them with kids, whatever. It was some crazy stories, right? And thinking as a young girl, imagining that being it wasn't safe to be a beautiful woman. It, like you said, it's almost like it's a curse to be a beautiful woman. Imagine as a young girl taking that on and trying to go through life as a young girl into developing into a young woman with this fear of being beautiful. But also, like you said, Tiani, it's also your greatest gift, because there's nothing more powerful that I can think of, and maybe I'm biased because I'm a woman, than being a beautiful woman. A beautiful woman has so much power, but what if no one tells you how to deal with it? That's what I think is partially missing from the feminist movement. Are we taking young women under our wing and giving them some guidelines on how to use their beauty and femininity, how to be vulnerable in a way that's safe and healthy, how to set boundaries, not from a masculine place, but in a, because I do think there's a lot of that out there where it's like, oh, learn self-defense, or, oh, I ain't taking no mess up off no man, that kind of stuff. But what about teaching women how to be women, beautiful, vulnerable, feminine, and still be safe and protect and to recognize the signs of when something could be going askew, but also, since beauty is a form of power, how to use that power wisely. Is that because there is an inherent competitive nature between women? So while we're trying to have this camaraderie of the feminist movement, there's also this inherent competition that happens. And we see this a lot, it's illustrated in fairy tales. The evil stepmother, the evil queen, even sometimes the biological mother is jealous and upset and trying to poison the daughter or the stepdaughter as she's coming into her femininity, basically hitting puberty or young womanhood. She's becoming a young woman. She's becoming, the men are starting to notice her. She's having suitors, etc., right? And the mother is aging, and there's a jealousy that's there, right? We have this, and we're not acknowledging that this is a part and could be some of the motivation in the feminist movement of why we're being pushed towards independence. We don't need a man. Men are evil. Men are a threat. Well, how are we going to build the community with these type of ideals? And then, isn't that a lot of work for us to take on as women? Trying to be the mothers, trying to be the community pillars and activists, and out here being the earners. Don't you think that's a lot for us to take on? And then, where does our beauty figure into that? Because we have this God-given power of being beautiful, feminine women, especially, in my opinion, Black women. We're the most brilliantly beautiful, gifted beings there are. And we're imitated worldwide. Who is talking to us about how to use that power? Who is empowering us to be feminine, vulnerable in a healthy way, and to be able to use that within the community to help to bring the family back together, raise healthy kids, and kind of move our agenda forward from a feminine place? Now, I touch on this often. So thank you for bringing that up, Tiani Chioke. I would say that beauty is a gift. And I think what we should do is release ourselves from the curse aspect of it. And that's what I'm working on in therapy. And I'm definitely going to bring this to you as I continue to work on it. It's between 6 and 12 weeks of therapy. And I'm going to release the curse aspect and just focus on the gift of the beauty of my womanhood. So, stream of consciousness below. My therapist gave me an assignment And she said, I want you to take 3 to 5 minutes and do a stream of consciousness, writing what you feel about women. Now, you guys know that I'm here talking to women, right? I love you guys. I love myself. I love the women in my life. I love all the Black women in the community. And I feel some sense of camaraderie uh, with the women in my community, right? And that's why I'm here, because I realize that there's a lot of negative conditioning, in particular when my family, with me, and what I had to go through to kind of like begin to release and let go and heal from the negative conditioning. And again, I am here with you ladies, so that the ones who are here and love being here and love to grow, and I'm kind of rambling now, but you guys get what I'm saying. Like, I'm here for us. So I just wanted to preface that before I read this to you, because this was a stream of consciousness of how I was feeling as I was letting go of all of this pain and hurt, when I was realizing that the people in my life who had dragged me down, who had touched me, bullied me, hurt me, abandoned me, stole from me, killed, I allowed them to kill my dreams from being a child all the way up to recently. I had to take responsibility for that. But this is how I felt initially. Negative, broken people. Women are jealous, mean-spirited, limited thinking. Most of my life, girls have sort of bullied me. It was not dangerous to be a pretty girl because of the attention of men. It was actually, in my world, dangerous to be a beautiful woman who is smart and kind of has it together. It was dangerous to be this type of woman because of other women. I recall many influences in my life where girls and women were the biggest bullies and shamers. They caused me to doubt myself, feel ashamed of my body, my beauty, my hair. They used me and attacked me because of their jealousy and envy. And the ones I helped, sometimes they would abandon me in my time of need. In this realization that women were the main perpetrators of negativity in my world, I feel liberated. Now I am feeling free. I can now see my past experiences not through the lens of my mother's experience, but with the clarity of my own. Her story was not my story. But because I tried to take on aspects of her story, I was not acknowledging what was going on in my own journey. It was not the boogeyman who scared me and frightened me, who tormented me. On the contrary, it was the boogie woman. I never believed that women were so mean-spirited and competitive. Like many a fairy tale, we as women must, as beautiful women, must shield ourselves in the cloak of self-love, self-care, self-value, worth. We as women, Black women, may be the victims of white women's jealousy. It is not white men that we need to fear presently, right? Yes, absolutely, there's some craziness that is going on with white men, okay? But again, this is a stream of consciousness for me in relation to women. And I think this kind of relates a little bit to what we just saw with this woman cop, right? Because I don't want to digress too much, but there's a lot to unpack with that situation. And I don't get deep into the politics of a lot of that stuff, because there's a lot of other women on this platform that are discussing those things. And I like to focus more on our mental and spiritual health and development. But I think you guys may be able to see the parallels there. At this particular moment, it's not the white men that we need to fear. When I was doing the streaming of consciousness, it is the wrath of the scorned white woman. As a race of Black women, they intimidate, and they manipulate to get ahead of us in beauty, in intelligence, in self-worth. Maybe this explains some of the things, the trends in interracial dating, some of the hijacking of our culture while pushing us down. Maybe this is some form of revenge for the hurt, the scorn that they felt with their forefathers' infidelities. But we as women, we are wise. I am wise. I am beautiful. I am a Black woman. I am allowed to shine most radiantly from within. So I started doing affirmations. I am beautiful. I am brilliant. I am gifted. I am reclaiming the throne. A beautiful woman is very powerful. And just like the fairy tales, beautiful women, especially beautiful young women, are hated, envied, sabotaged, murdered, poisoned by other women, evil, envious, jealous, old women, ugly women. Snow White, for example. We as Black women must band together against them. So I started thinking about the bigger picture in my stream of consciousness, my personal experiences, the community experiences, and then back to like even the fairy tales. So just all these messages and images that were around me that I was ignoring because I was so busy focused on the men, the men, the men. The men are going to get me. The men are going to do something to me. They're going to, men, feminism, fuck men. We don't like men, men, get away from the men, right? In the meantime, everything around me was kind of showing me that the person who was telling me the story was a woman. The people who were scaring me were the women. The people who were doing all these things were the women, right? There was a competitiveness amongst us. Is that present in the Black community? Do we have that where light-skinned women and dark-skinned women are on each other? Beautiful Black women are being suppressed in certain ways if they go too high up, if they break free of the stereotypes. Then everybody's talking about them. Oh, they're not part of the community anymore. They forgot where they came from, right? Do we do that? And where can we as a community of women stop that? Where can we as a community of women begin to support each other, especially the younger girls? I always talk to us about how do we support the women of Generation Z? How do we support the women of the millennial generation? We as women, if we're serious about this movement in any way, shape, or form, have to first start with self and let go of the jealousy and the competition as much as we possibly can, as much as we humanly can, so that we can see who the true enemies are and not be distracted. Our men are not the enemy per se. Okay? Our men are not the enemies all the time. Sometimes that is the boogie woman trying to scare us away from our men. I hope that kind of makes some sense. Again, this is stream of consciousness. So I am free of the spell of my mother. My vision is clear. I now see I'm powerful. My inner strength is my beauty. My feminine strength is my beauty. What is right for one woman may or may not be right for me or you. If you see another woman and experience feelings of jealousy, envy, or low self-value, pause and do a self-check, ladies. What about her causes triggers those feelings? Her looks, her body, her man, how he treats her better, her lifestyle. Any area that is touched by those negative feelings are usually areas of neglect. They need attention in your own life experience. So what I'm saying is that when we feel that way towards each other, jealousy, envy, we're looking at people, we're judging, we got all this judgment about how folks are living their lives. Do a self-check. Are we judging the younger women? Let's do a self-check. Why are we judging them? Maybe because we see them doing some of the same things, making some of the same mistakes we made and now regret doing. We were not perfect. And yes, of course, we want to protect our young ladies, but we don't want to scare them to death from living life to the fullest. And that's the line. That's the fine line that we have to acknowledge. Yes, we want to help our young women set up healthy boundaries, not scare them half to death about men and being all competitive and hating on them and judging them. That doesn't help us. That didn't help me, right? So again, I'm almost done with this stream of consciousness, but I was actually writing these things. So I'm always, as much as possible, checking myself, because this is me checking myself, saying, why do I feel jealous or envious of another woman? Is it her looks? Is it her body? She's in better shape than me, her man, how he treats her, her lifestyle. Why would I feel that way? What is it about me that I'm feeling inadequate? Why am I feeling inadequate? Let those feelings reveal to you your areas of inspiration to level up. Improve your own mind energy. I got to improve my own mind energy, my thoughts, my self-talk. Focus on my areas of weakness. Challenge myself to be the best I can be. Take the focus off of her and place it on me. My mother's spell is broken. So that was my stream of consciousness around my experience with feminism, with femininity, with the boogie woman, the wicked witch, you know. I want to see some of your comments, what you guys have to say about this. And thank you. I see you got 68 comments now. Some narcissists are called covert narcissists. That's the kind, says Emily Dawn. Those are the kind that show no red flags. Please stop the victim blaming narrative that keeps these victims shunned, blamed for what is not their fault. So I just want to address that, Emily Dawn. There's no victim shaming here. I'm not trying to shame any victims. I'm not sure if you were even talking to me. You might have been having a conversation with some people in the chat. But I do want to make that clear. There's no victim shaming here. However, the only way you can heal from something is if you take a look at some things that have happened in your life and take a certain level of responsibility for your own healing. Whether that person is held accountable or not, whether they go to jail or whether you confront them or whatever, at some point in your life, you cannot continue. It's not healthy to continue to be a victim, if you know what I mean. It doesn't serve you to see yourself as a victim. That's something that I feel we can let go of if we do the work as women, as Black women in the Black community. I'm not a victim. But there have been times that I may have looked at myself as a potential victim, and that created a lot of fear. Now, if you're dealing with a narcissist or something like that, get away from the person. Free yourself. Don't be a victim. No one's blaming the victim unless they stay there and continue to be a victim. That's when the person has to take a look in the mirror and say, why am I doing this? Why am I still here? What's going on with me? And then seek the help that they need to get away from that situation. There's a lot of work that needs to be done when people have been victimized. So I'm not a psychologist. I'm not going to go too far down that road, but I'm not sure if you think this is victim blaming in some sort of way, but I definitely wanted to address it. I hope you feel heard, and I hope you were able to hear me. Anthony Carter says, but you still look good. Cardo Valentino says, strong. Anthony Carter says, the feminist movement is for white women. And I kind of touched on that in my stream of consciousness, and that was interesting that it came out that way, that it's like, it's one thing that, the feminist movement has kind of left Black women in a certain situation because we took on that story. Almost like with my individual story, I took on my mom's story, but it wasn't really my story, it was her story. But I started living it as if it was my truth and walking in the same fears that she had because of something that happened to her that didn't happen to me, which caused me to be blind to what was going on in my own life, which made me what? Vulnerable. Vulnerable to something I wasn't expecting, which was the very women that I was trying to feel camaraderie and lock arms with were actually some of the people who were my worst enemies. And this was when I was younger, not so much now because I've definitely grown and I don't have those type of people in my life anymore. But there was a time when that was happening frequently when I was younger. And it's only through hindsight and clarity and the ability and the willingness to take personal responsibility where I was able to say, there's something going on with me and I need to deal with it, that I was able to grow from the situation and release myself from that negative conditioning. So there's a little bit more I want to talk to you guys about in these last few minutes. How to detach fear from vulnerability. And I wanted to give you all that backstory, ladies and some gentlemen, because we have to detach the fear and get ourselves into a place of healthy vulnerability to restore the community, the trust that we're missing in our community, and between men and women in our community, between women each other, and men and each other. And just in general, there seems to be a big distrust, a seed that has been sown in our community by others, I would hazard to guess. And yes, feminism, in my opinion, is a part of that. It's a part of the spider's web that has been sown in our community, to where we've been sold this story of the Black man as evil, as the Black man as this horrible person that's going to do all these horrible things to us as women in the community and at large. And again, this is not to say that there aren't some instances out here where men, Black men, white men, whoever, have done things that were horrible and they should answer for it. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the narrative that is causing us to stay focused on fear, false evidence appearing real, when there are actually things in the present moment that we could be focused on, enjoying, or dealing with, healing from, or celebrating. Where we could be using our power in the present moment, but we're distracted by fears that aren't necessarily coming from us in our own experience. It's something that's being given to us, if that makes sense. Something we're inheriting. And we should, in a healthy way, question that. And that's what we're going to get into real quick. I'm going to read a couple more comments, because you guys are really having a great conversation over there, and I appreciate it. Anthony Carter says, the white woman goes home to her man, yet teach you Black women not to have a man. It is all about genetic annihilation. The more of us we produce, the less there is of them, and we can interact with them. Think about that. I've definitely heard that argument before, Anthony. Thank you for bringing that forward. Freddie Smith says, still learning more to make right choices forever, NOI.org. Anthony Carter, bring back Michi. Maybe he means Michi? I don't know. Anthony Carter say the whole history starts with slavery. Anthony Carter, okay, first of all, you have to pick the right man. Cardo Valentino says, glad I don't have any kids. This new age is a trip. Nobody is perfect. Get someone who is halfway decent and build from there. Anthony Carter says. Freddie Smith, who is more valuable, the male or the female? We both have our own value, Freddie Smith. And we should acknowledge that to each other. We were created as man and woman. Now, I know people have their different things that they're doing now with their identities and their sexualities, etc., etc. Fine. Let them have that. In the meantime, those of us who are interested in repairing the community, repairing the family, and kind of, bringing things back together, first it starts with self and the acknowledgement that I am, as an individual, I am valuable. I love myself. And I'm here to acknowledge the fear that's there. Right? And I'm going to walk you through a couple of steps real quick on how to do that. Who is more valuable? If you're a male, you're the most valuable person. If you're a female, you're the most valuable person. The most valuable person is self. You have to value yourself before you can value anything else, or else it's going to be off balance. It's probably going to fail if you're not valuing yourself in a healthy way. So how to detach fear from vulnerability. First you have to acknowledge the fear. Acknowledge what you're feeling, right? You could write it, or you can simply just sit with it for a moment and allow it to become present in your mind. But you don't want to live there, okay? So the next thing you're going to do is you're going to ask yourself, why am I afraid? Or what am I afraid of? And then you're going to quiet yourself, become present, like pull yourself out of your head and looking at whatever the fear is, and ask yourself, why am I afraid? Or what am I afraid of? And then as you listen, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be something from your past that's going to come up and show you the hurt that happened. Or it's going to be a projection into the future, probably based on something you've heard, seen, or experienced. So it's a two-pronged thing. When you ask yourself, why am I afraid? The why am I afraid usually leads you to the past incident. Pay attention, because whatever comes up, that's the thing that needs to be healed and released. So the next thing is you say, what am I afraid of? When you say, what am I afraid of? That's when the projection into the future will become present. Those will be your fears. And you can address each of those by next acknowledging first the hurt. Feel those feelings. Be present with them to realize that it's okay to feel and release those feelings that are attached to that fear that is attached to the past incident, and then forgive yourself. Start to detach by forgiving yourself, because a lot of us, even though something happened to us and it wasn't necessarily our fault, we still feel shame, we still feel guilty, we still feel hurt. So in order to detach from that fear, you have to release the emotion, and that may be crying, that may be laughing, that may be sobbing. But again, we don't want to live there. We just sit there and release and let it go. I did this in therapy. I just let it go. I started crying. I started telling her all these stories, and I didn't stop crying from 5 minutes into the session until the end. Because I needed to let it go. I needed to acknowledge those past hurts and create that psychological space, as we have talked about before, by letting go. So acknowledge that hurt from the past, right? And say, and let yourself, and then become present. Once you have cried, once you have screamed, once you have laughed or shouted, whatever that emotion is, you've given it that release. Become present again. Calm yourself down. Become present and realize that that thing that happened in the past is gone. And then on the second half of that, you asked yourself, what am I afraid of? That brings in the future projection to something happening similar to that, or something else bad related to that you are projecting. Understand that you must, again, acknowledge that and then become present. And when I say become present, that means you're acknowledging it because you're seeing the image in your mind of what the fear is, what might happen. But in that moment, you see it and you say, okay, thank you, but I don't need you anymore. I'm okay. That is not real. You become present and you say, I'm safe, I'm protected. That's not real. You look around in the present and you tell yourself, I'm safe, I'm healthy, I'm happy. Whatever it is that the fear is, the opposite of that fear. You acknowledge that you are present in the moment, And that fear is false evidence appearing real because it's being projected into the future. So one of the first things you're going to say to that future projection is, no, thank you. As you become present, no, thank you. No. I am present, I am here, I am safe, I am happy, I am healthy, I am open, and it is safe for me to be vulnerable. I'm being vulnerable in this moment by acknowledging my fears. My past hurts. I'm being vulnerable by acknowledging my past hurts and allowing them to come up through me and release. So they're no longer anchored down in my soul. So they're no longer sitting in the back of my mind. This is your self-talk. This is how I'm healing myself, and I'm giving this information and these steps to you. Free yourselves from negative conditioning. Let's do it together. The next step is sit in gratitude that this hurt has been released for healing. So as you're sitting there and you're being present in the moment and you're letting go of that past and you're releasing that emotion and you're becoming present to see that that is not true. Because I'm sitting there right now and that thing that happened is not happening to me now. I am present in this moment. I am no longer in that space. I am no longer that person. Thank you for bringing this up. Thank you for my healing. I forgive myself. I forgive that person. I forgive the situation. And I understand that I am happy and grateful that I am able to be present in this moment, to release those fears, to release that negative energy, to create that psychological space, to detach the negative energy and emotions from my vulnerability. That's how you make your vulnerability healthy. The next step is, I said it already, forgiveness of yourself. Because again, I said a lot of us don't realize that we're carrying around a lot of guilt for something that we weren't even responsible for. Now they say energetically, if you want to get really deep, that we are responsible for everything that manifests in our world. But what I'm saying is that this forgiveness that you give yourself releases you from that. Isn't that beautiful? It's releasing you. So in that moment, when I was in therapy and I was like, I forgive myself. I forgive myself for listening to those stories. I forgive myself from taking on her story. I forgive myself for putting myself into situations where I was vulnerable in an unhealthy way. And what I mean by being vulnerable in an unhealthy way, because I was so attached to the fear of being vulnerable to men, I was allowing myself to be vulnerable to other types of situations where, like I said earlier, women were doing certain things that were kind of causing me to doubt myself and let go of good guys who were in my life, or distrust certain men that, I had no reason to distrust. Does that make sense? This is my experience. I'm being very vulnerable and open to you guys right now because I want to give you a personal example in how I'm working through this. So you forgive yourself, you forgive others, and this is for you. This is not for them. This is for you, my sisters, my queens, my brilliant, beautiful Black women. This is for us. I'm sharing this with you for us. And we should share this with others. Please like, please subscribe, please share this video with anyone you think it may help. Now we're almost done with this. So I was writing the rest of it right before I started. So I didn't get all of it written into my notebook. So now I'm going to jump over really quick into my Gmail and read some more of it to you. as we finish up here. And again, I want to say thank everyone for joining me here at FlyNubianQueen.com, the network for melanated women just like you and me, and for some of the guys who join us here too. I love you all so much. This is one of my love letters to you as women in the community. So what is some of the last steps here? So I'll just read this to you and we'll end here. So we said the first thing to do is to acknowledge the fear you're feeling. Sit with it or write it down. Just for a moment, though. We're not going to live there. And even I would say, if you can avoid writing it, that's probably good, because sometimes there's a little bit of extra energy that's put into writing something down, unless you're going to do a ritual where you tear it up or set it on fire and, do some kind of ritual like that. So it's better to just acknowledge the fear you're feeling, because when you do that, you create space. And you're able to sit with it, and for a moment, you see it. So the first thing is acknowledge the fear. The second thing is ask yourself, why am I afraid? And then what am I afraid of? And when you ask yourself, why am I afraid? Acknowledge what comes up. Because when you're saying, why am I afraid? Typically, you're asking yourself, what is causing this fear? And it's going to be something from the past. So then you take a moment to acknowledge that hurt from the past. That's the third step. And then the fourth step is to sit with that emotion, like allow that emotion. Don't try to not cry. Don't try to not laugh, or whatever that emotion is, that shout. Give yourself that moment to feel that feeling, because that's going to release you from that anchor. So you sit in gratitude. Once you feel it release, you become present again. That's step number 5. And you forgive yourself. And you forgive that situation, and you forgive those people. This is for you. This is not anything you need to do out loud or in front of other people to witness. Sisters, this is for you. And so, again, going back to step 2, you're asking yourself, why am I afraid? Boom, that's the past. Going back to step 2, what am I afraid of? That's going to project you into the future. You sit with that for a moment. Again, when you sit with it and you acknowledge what you're afraid, what am I afraid of? It's a projection into the future. So again, it's not the present. So once you see it, acknowledge it, become present again, right? So step 3, we're going back down the line. Ask yourself, what am I afraid of? See the future projection. Acknowledge that it's false evidence appearing real, because the future is whatever you decide it to be. So you will tell that, no, thank you. Whatever that image is, you will say, no, thank you, and become present. I am safe in this moment. Whatever it is that you're fearing, you will meditate and give yourself affirmations in that present moment that are opposite of what that is what you actually want to happen, which is something positive and good, right? Sit in gratitude. Thank you. Number 5 is forgive yourself. Forgive the others. Forgive yourself for projecting something negative and hurtful, because our mind, that's mind energy that's going into the process of manifesting. So when you say no, thank you, and I forgive myself for projecting that fear. It's false. It's false evidence appearing real. I thank myself for this present moment, that I am safe, I am happy, I am healthy, whatever it is, right? You say your affirmations and you let go of that fear. That's how you create that space and detach fear from your vulnerability. That's how you get back to being healthy and vulnerable, because there is a such thing as healthy vulnerability. So just to sum it up, Sending this to my therapist this week, I processed my feelings. I began to feel defensive and angry towards women in my life. I also began feeling suspicious of the women I was encountering who want to meet for lunch or maybe be friends or chit chat in my everyday encounters. I caught myself allowing anger to sit with me, and then I realized that I did not want to become bitchy to other women because of what I went through. That would just be me repeating the cycle of negative thinking that perpetuates those feelings and manifests it. Besides, anger covers sadness, which covers hurt, which covers fear of vulnerability for me. So I chose instead to sit in forgiveness and gratitude. I forgave myself, my mothers, my friends, the feminist movement. I sat in gratitude that I was brave enough to face myself and take responsibility for some of the encounters, experiences I manifested because I attached fear to my vulnerability. And asked myself, how can I learn? How can I grow and move forward from this new insight? I allowed that I will grow from it by letting that story go. I will release the anchors in the steps that I laid out to you, ladies and gentlemen. No need to attach a new story of fear to it. And that's what I was about to do when I was getting angry. That was going to be an anchor for me. But I let it go. As I meditated on these thoughts, I felt the weight of anger, disappointment, and insecurity leave me, release me. I began feeling light and happy and free. No longer did I fear women or men. There is still just a touch of hesitation around my encounters with people as I'm continuing to heal and let go of the fear. And I am allowing myself to acknowledge that. Fear precedes the vulnerability, but I am creating space. I am detaching from it. I create space between my fears and my vulnerability. I detach them from one another by becoming fully present and realizing that those fears are not real because those fears are in the past or the future, not the present. Listening to my fears followed by taking a moment to empower and comfort myself as I detach the negative emotion. By release and detach from the negative emotion, that is how I am restoring health to my mind and spirit. I am stepping out into a new space. And whenever you are stepping forward into a new space, there is the element of vulnerability. Whenever you're trying something new or doing something new, you have to be vulnerable. But if you're not vulnerable from a healthy place, and it's attached with fear and negative emotions, you can manifest those things into the present moment and be hurt all over again. And that will stunt your growth and your progress. And so I just want to say, as we wrap this up, thank you so much for joining me, Deena Jacobs, live here every Sunday night at 7 p.m. Pacific time and 10 p.m. Eastern. I am your mindset evolutionary here at flynewbeingqueen.com, the network for melanated women just like you and me, sisters, Black women in the community. Thank you so much for being here. I hope that this helps you in some way. And I'd love to hear from you. Hit me up on social media, Deena Jacobs, on Twitter, on Instagram, on YouTube, Facebook. Please like, share, and subscribe here if you haven't already. And I apologize I didn't get to all of your comments. I will go back and read them sometime during the week. And as usual, probably give everybody a thumbs up just for commenting. But I hope you got something out of this. If you did, hit me up and let me know. I want you guys to know that I love you so much. And I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for joining me. And I hope you have a wonderful Sunday and a blessed week. Let me know if this helps you. I'd love to hear from you. Have a good night. Mwah.